You know what's funny? There are more millionaires today than at any point in human history. The stock market keeps hitting new highs, real estate values continue climbing in most major cities, and we're constantly told that wealth-building opportunities are everywhere. Yet if you're reading this, there's a good chance you work hard, make a decent income, pay your bills on time, and still feel like you're running on a financial treadmill going absolutely nowhere. You're not alone. A recent study found that nearly 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and here's the kicker. That includes people earning six figures. That means doctors, lawyers, engineers, successful middle managers, people who did everything right, who got the education, who climbed the ladder, are still trapped in the exact same financial stress as someone making half their income. How is that possible? How can someone earning $200,000 a year be just as financially fragile as someone earning $50,000? The answer isn't what you think, and it's definitely not what they taught you in school.
Let me tell you about Michael. Michael is a composite of dozens of people I've known over the years, but his story is painfully common. Michael graduated college with a degree in engineering, landed a solid job at a reputable company, making $70,000 a year. Not bad for a starting salary, right? He felt like he'd made it. His parents were proud. His friends were impressed. He did what everyone told him to do next. He got a nicer apartment because, well, he could afford it now. He bought a reliable car, nothing fancy, just a decent Honda with a monthly payment he could easily handle. He started contributing to his 401k because that's what responsible people do. He got married to his college sweetheart, and together they were making over $100,000. They were living the dream. They bought a house in a good neighborhood because they wanted to start a family in a safe area with good schools. The mortgage was steep, but the bank approved them, so it must be affordable, right? They had a kid, then another. Daycare costs were astronomical, but what choice did they have? Both needed to work. Michael got a few promotions over the years. By his mid-30s, he was making $120,000. Sounds great on paper, but here's what nobody tells you. His lifestyle had grown with every raise. The bigger house needed more furniture, more maintenance, higher utility bills, higher property taxes. The kids needed activities, sports, music lessons, tutoring. The older car needed to be replaced with something safer, more reliable for the growing family. They took modest vacations because they worked hard and deserved it. They ate out more because both were exhausted from work and parenting. They had subscriptions for everything, streaming services, gym memberships, meal kits, because everyone has those now. Fast forward to Michael at 45 years old. He's making $160,000 a year. He should feel wealthy, right? But he doesn't. He has about $8,000 in his savings account, which sounds okay until you realize that won't even cover 1 month of his family's expenses. He has maybe $150,000 in his 401k. Which sounds impressive until you do the math and realize that at this rate, he'll never be able to retire comfortably. He has about $200,000 left on his mortgage, a car payment, credit card debt that seems to hover around $15,000 no matter how much he pays, student loans that will haunt him until his 50s. And the constant gnawing anxiety that if he loses his job, his entire life would collapse within months. Michael isn't poor, but he's also not rich. He's trapped in the middle, and the middle is exactly where the system wants him to be. Here's the truth they don't want you to understand. The middle class isn't designed to build wealth. It's designed to generate wealth for others. Think about it. Everything about middle-class life is structured around consumption with the illusion of investment. You're told to buy a house because it's an investment, but is it really? Yes, real estate can appreciate, but let's be honest about what homeownership actually means for most middle-class families. You're not buying a house as an investment property. You're buying a home to live in, which means you're not generating income from it. You're paying a mortgage where the first 10 years are almost entirely interest. You're paying property taxes that only go up. You're paying for maintenance and repairs that can cost thousands of dollars at unexpected moments. You're paying homeowners insurance, and you're tying up a massive amount of your net worth in a single, illiquid asset that you can't access without selling the place where you live. Meanwhile, the bank that gave you the mortgage, the insurance company protecting it, the government taxing it, they're all making money off your investment every single month. You're making them rich while you're telling yourself you're building equity.
Then there's the biggest scam of all, your retirement plan. You're told to contribute to a 401k, and yes, Compound interest is real and powerful, but let's talk about what's actually happening. You're putting money into accounts that you can't touch for decades without penalties. You're investing in funds that charge you management fees every single year, whether they perform well or not. These fees seem small, maybe 1%, maybe 0.5%. But over 30 years, those fees can consume 30% or more of your total returns. You're getting a tax deduction now, sure, but you'll pay taxes on every penny you withdraw in retirement. And if tax rates go up, which they likely will, you might actually be worse off. Meanwhile, the financial institutions managing your money are making billions in fees. They're getting rich off your retirement savings, while you're hoping you'll have enough to live on when you're 70. And here's the darkest part. The system is designed so that you never quite have enough. Social Security will give you something, but not enough to maintain your lifestyle. Your 401k will give you something, but probably not enough to stop working entirely. You'll need to downsize, cut back, make sacrifices in the final chapters of your life after spending the best years making other people wealthy. Let me break down the real math that keeps middle-class people trapped. Let's say you make $100,000 a year. Sounds like a lot, right? But after federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security and Medicare, you're taking home maybe $70,000, depending on where you live. That's $5,800 a month. Now let's look at expenses for a typical middle-class family. Mortgage or rent in a decent area, let's say $2,000. That's being conservative in many cities. Car payments for 2 reliable vehicles, maybe $700 combined. Car insurance, $200. Gas and maintenance, $300. That's already $3,200 and we haven't even gotten to food yet. Groceries for a family of 4, at least $600 if you're being frugal, probably more like $800. Eating out occasionally, another $300. We're at $4,300 now. Health insurance premiums, even with employer coverage, maybe $500 out of pocket. Utilities including electric, gas, water, trash, internet, cell phones, easily $400. We're at $5,200. Student loan payments, maybe $400. Credit card minimum payments, $200. We're at $5,800. Wait, that's the entire take-home pay, and we haven't included kids' activities, clothing, home repairs, entertainment, gifts, unexpected medical expenses, or saving anything for emergencies or retirement beyond the minimal 401k contribution. This is why people making 6 figures still live paycheck to paycheck. The math doesn't work unless you make radical changes that nobody is teaching you to make. Now, contrast this with how wealthy people actually operate. Rich people don't make their money from salaries. They make money from ownership. They own businesses that generate profit, whether they show up or not. They own real estate that other people pay mortgages on through rent, building equity for the owner, not the renter. They own stocks and investments that pay dividends. They own intellectual property, patents, royalties that generate passive income. They use something called leverage, which is a fancy word for using other people's money to make investments that generate returns higher than the cost of borrowing. A wealthy person might take out a loan at 5% interest to invest in something that returns 10%. They just made 5% on money that wasn't even theirs. A middle-class person takes out a loan at 5% to buy a car that immediately depreciates 20% the moment they drive it off the lot. See the difference? Here's another critical distinction. Middle-class people trade time for money. You work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and you get paid for those hours. If you stop working, the money stops. You are the asset. Your time, your energy, your health, that's what's being converted into income. Rich people buy assets that generate income. They're not the asset. Their time is freed up to acquire more assets, to make better decisions, to optimize their wealth-building systems. They work on their business, not in their business. They hire people to trade time for money while they focus on strategy and acquisition. Middle-class people can't do this because all their time is already spoken for, and all their money is already allocated to expenses, leaving nothing left to invest in assets. The tax system is another massive wealth transfer mechanism that nobody explains clearly. Middle-class people pay the highest effective tax rates of any group. The working poor don't make enough to pay much in taxes. The wealthy have access to deductions, write-offs, tax-advantaged accounts, and strategies that dramatically lower their tax burden. They can deduct business expenses, depreciation on properties, losses that offset gains. They can defer income, move money through trusts and entities, take loans against assets rather than selling them to avoid capital gains taxes. The middle class gets none of this. You get your standard deduction, and that's about it. You can't write off your commute to work, you can't depreciate your personal vehicle, you can't defer your salary. You just get taxed on every dollar you earn, and then you get taxed again when you spend it through sales tax, and then you get taxed again through property tax, and again through excise taxes on gas and everything else. You're being bled from every direction while following all the rules. While wealthy people are playing an entirely different game with entirely different rules. Education is sold as the great equalizer, the ticket to the middle class and beyond. But let's examine what actually happens. You're told to go to college, so you do. You take on tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands in student debt to get a degree that qualifies you for a job that pays you just enough to service that debt while covering your basic living expenses. You've essentially sold your future earnings before you even start your career. The university got paid. The loan servicer is getting paid interest for decades. And you? You got a credential that allows you to enter the workforce in a slightly better position than someone without it, but you're now financially behind compared to someone who started a business or learned a trade at 18 and has been earning and building for 4 years while you were paying tuition. I'm not saying education is worthless. Knowledge has immense value. But the transaction, trading massive debt for a credential that might get you a middle-class job, is not the wealth-building strategy it's advertised to be. It's a wealth transfer from young people and their families to institutions and lenders. Let's talk about something that makes people uncomfortable. The psychological conditioning that keeps the middle class exactly where they are. From childhood, you're taught a very specific set of values. Get good grades so you can get into a good college. Get a degree so you can get a good job. Get a good job so you can afford a nice house and a reliable car. Work hard, be loyal to your employer, save for retirement, and everything will work out. This is the script, and millions of people follow it precisely, only to reach their 50s and realize they're nowhere near financial security. The script is broken, but questioning it feels dangerous, even irresponsible. You're taught that wanting more is greedy, that taking risks is reckless, that business ownership is for other people, people with connections or capital or special talents. You're taught to value security over opportunity, to choose the steady paycheck over the uncertain venture, to play it safe. And playing it safe keeps you exactly where the system needs you to be, productive, consuming, dependent, and most importantly, not wealthy enough to opt out. The consumption trap is perhaps the most insidious mechanism of all. The middle class is constantly marketed to, constantly told that happiness and success look like certain products, certain experiences, certain lifestyles. You need the latest phone because it represents innovation and keeping up with modern life. You need the nice car because it reflects your success and provides safety for your family. You need the big house because that's where memories are made and it's a good investment. You need the vacations because you work hard and deserve them. You need to give your kids every opportunity, which means paying for activities and experiences and things. None of these desires are wrong. The problem is that each one comes with a monthly payment, and monthly payments are how wealth is extracted from the middle class. Subscriptions, financing, payment plans, they're all designed to make consumption feel affordable by breaking it into small, manageable chunks. But those chunks add up. That $100 monthly payment might seem reasonable, but it's $1,200 a year. And if you have 10 of those, that's $12,000 a year, $120,000 over a decade, flowing out of your life and into someone else's pocket. Here's something else nobody tells you. Inflation is a hidden tax that destroys middle-class wealth, while the rich protect themselves. When the cost of everything goes up, your salary might get a modest raise, maybe 3% if you're lucky. But housing goes up 5%, healthcare goes up 7%, education goes up 6%, food goes up 4%. You're losing ground every single year. Your purchasing power is declining. Meanwhile, wealthy people own assets that inflate with the currency. Their real estate values go up. Their stock portfolios go up, their business revenues go up, Inflation makes them richer because they own things. It makes the middle class poorer because they own very little except expenses that keep growing. The debt trap is where many middle-class families truly lose the game. It usually doesn't start with massive irresponsibility. It starts small. The car needs a repair you weren't expecting, so you put it on the credit card. The medical bill after insurance is more than you thought, so you set up a payment plan. The kids need school supplies and clothes, so you charge it. Each one seems manageable. You'll pay it off next month. But next month, something else comes up, and the balance doesn't go down, it goes up. And now you're paying interest, which means a portion of your income every month is going purely to the cost of past consumption. You're paying for things you bought months or years ago. You're running faster just to stay in place. The credit card company loves this. They don't want you to pay off your balance. They want you to make minimum payments forever. That's where they make their real money. A family carrying $15,000 in credit card debt at 18% interest is paying $2,250 a year just in interest. That's money that could be invested, that could be building wealth. Instead, it's pure profit for the bank. Let's destroy another myth. Hard work doesn't make you rich. If hard work created wealth, the hardest working people in society would be the wealthiest. Construction workers, nurses, teachers, restaurant staff, they work incredibly hard, often at multiple jobs, and they're not rich. Meanwhile, some of the wealthiest people in society work very little by comparison, or at least their income isn't tied to their hours worked. The difference isn't effort, it's what you're working on. Middle-class people work hard at jobs that have a ceiling on earning potential. No matter how hard you work, you can't make $1 million a year as a middle manager or a nurse or a teacher. The structure doesn't allow it. Rich people work hard at things that have no ceiling. They build businesses that can scale. They make investments that can multiply. They create systems that generate returns far beyond their personal time input. Hard work is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You can work hard your entire life and die broke if you're working hard at the wrong things. The retirement calculation that nobody wants to confront is this. Financial experts say you need roughly 25 times your annual expenses saved to retire comfortably. If you want to spend $50,000 a year in retirement, you need $1.25 million saved. If you want to spend $75,000, you need almost $2 million. How many middle-class families have that? The median retirement savings for families approaching retirement age is around $100,000. That's not enough. That's not even close, which means most middle-class people will never truly retire. They'll stop working their main career maybe, but they'll need to keep earning something, doing something, because they won't have enough. They followed the rules. They saved what they could. They contributed to the 401k, and it wasn't enough. So what actually works? What's the path from middle class to wealthy? It's not a secret, but it does require doing things differently than most people are willing to do. First, you have to stop trading time for money as your primary income source. This doesn't mean quit your job tomorrow. It means you need to start building or acquiring assets that generate income. This could be starting a side business, buying rental property, building a portfolio of dividend-paying investments, creating digital products or content that generates ongoing revenue. Second, you have to become absolutely ruthless about expenses. Not cheap, but intentional. Every dollar you spend should be a conscious choice that aligns with your goals. Cut everything that doesn't matter to you personally. Stop spending to impress people. Stop buying things because everyone else does. Stop subscribing to things you don't use. Redirect that money toward assets. Third, you have to increase your income. And the best way to do that is to provide more value, not just work more hours. Learn high-income skills. Negotiate raises aggressively. Switch jobs if necessary. Start a business. Fourth, you have to understand that wealth building is a long game that rewards early action and consistency. The person who starts investing seriously at 25 will be far wealthier than the person who starts at 40, even if the 40-year-old invests more money. Time is your most valuable asset when you're young, and most people waste it consuming instead of building. You also have to change your relationship with risk. The middle-class aversion to risk is actually incredibly risky. Playing it safe, keeping the stable job, never trying anything new that feels secure, but it leaves you completely vulnerable to forces outside your control. One layoff, one health crisis, one economic downturn, and that security evaporates. Real security comes from having multiple income streams, from owning assets, from having skills and knowledge that can't be taken away. Starting a business feels risky, but spending 40 years dependent on a single employer is actually far more risky. Investing in stocks feels risky, but keeping all your money in a savings account that's losing value to inflation every year is actually the risky move. You have to reframe what risk really means. Wealthy people also think differently about money in fundamental ways. They see money as a tool, not a goal. Money is what you use to buy your time back, to create freedom, to build the life you actually want. Middle-class people see money as the thing you work for so you can buy stuff. Rich people see investments everywhere. They walk into a business and think about how it operates, what it could be worth, whether it's profitable. They see problems as business opportunities. They see their own skills and knowledge as products that can be monetized. Middle-class people walk into a business as a customer. They see problems as annoyances. They see their skills as what they trade to an employer for a paycheck. The perspective is completely different. There's also the network effect. Rich people surround themselves with other rich people, not just for status, but because those relationships create opportunities. Business deals, investments, partnerships, insider knowledge about what's working and what's not. Middle-class people often surround themselves with other middle-class people who reinforce middle-class thinking. Everyone complains about money. Everyone agrees the system is unfair. Everyone shares stories about bills and expenses. And nothing changes because the collective mindset is stuck. You need to find people who are where you want to be, who can mentor you, who can show you what's possible, who expect more, and therefore push you to expect more from yourself. Let me be clear about something. None of this is easy. Building wealth from a middle-class starting point is incredibly hard. The system is designed to keep you where you are. You're fighting against cultural conditioning, against targeted marketing, against a tax structure that favors the already wealthy, against the time demands of work and family, against the constant anxiety of financial fragility. But hard doesn't mean impossible. Thousands of people make the leap every year. They start businesses that succeed. They invest wisely and watch their portfolios grow. They buy their first rental property, then a second, then a third. They create products or services or content that generates passive income. They gradually, over years, shift from being dependent on a paycheck to being financially independent. It takes longer than you want. It requires more discipline than feels comfortable. It demands that you do things your peers aren't doing and resist things your peers are doing. It means saying no to a lot of things so you can say yes to the things that actually matter. The question you need to ask yourself is whether you're willing to be different. Because that's what it takes. Everyone around you is following the same script, buying the house they can barely afford, taking on car payments, financing everything, saving a little in a 401k, hoping it all works out. And for most of them, it won't. They'll work until they can't anymore. They'll live on less in retirement than they did while working, and they'll never have the freedom they dreamed of. If you want a different outcome, you need different actions. You need to question everything you've been taught about money. You need to learn how money actually works, how wealth is actually built, how the game is actually played. You need to make uncomfortable choices. You need to invest in yourself, in your education, in your skills, in your business ideas, even when it's scary. You need to accept short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, which is the opposite of what consumer culture teaches. The middle class isn't a destination. It's a trap disguised as success. You're doing well enough that you don't feel poor, but not well enough to ever be free. You're comfortable enough that change feels risky, but not comfortable enough to actually relax. You have something to lose, which makes you cautious, but not enough to protect you if things go wrong. This is where they want you. Productive, compliant, consuming, and perpetually one crisis away from disaster. Breaking free requires seeing this clearly, accepting it, and deciding you want something different badly enough to do what it takes. The tools exist, the information exists, the opportunities exist. What's usually missing is the willingness to step outside the comfort zone of the middle-class script and write a different story. The choice is yours. But understand that not choosing is still a choice, and that choice has consequences that will compound over decades.